to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about drama in the archaeology community surrounding a paper which was published and then retracted, where the authors had claimed that they had discovered the oldest known man-made pyramid. Today we're talking about probably the furthest thing from that humanly possible, which is the princess community, or what they themselves refer to as the princess world, which is specifically princess impersonators, predominantly Disney from what I can see. These are the people you hire when your child really wants Cinderella to come to their birthday. Party princesses are a healthier industry than I think most of us may realize, and part of that is just because Disney doesn't go after these people. Likely, I would assume, because it continues to foster a healthy and positive relationship with Disney as a whole. So they're benefiting from it one way or another. Obviously, unless you do it badly, but like those businesses wouldn't survive. Now, these are predominantly small businesses that run in this space, and so there are a lot of groups that exist online where people who run these businesses, work in these businesses, can come together and meet and talk about things and sell things to each other, things along those lines. I've been told it's important to specify that these are not the same people who go to like conventions and do princess cosplays. That is a totally separate genre. So, what happened? A few days ago, a video was posted by a party princess named Chloe who runs her own business out of Texas. In this video, she makes a joke about there being drama in the princess community and basically just says she's getting a lot of like mean kind of bullying comments from a particular person who does the voice of Belle very well in these groups, these private groups that they're in. And she just says, you know, when this happens, I like to read the comments in Belle's voice because that's what this woman is known for. And she basically just says when you get bad comments, this is how you should handle it. And that's the video. It truly was not that intense, at least from my perspective. However, the woman who it was about, which is a woman named Christina, who also runs a party princess business also out of Texas, though a different part of Texas than Chloe, found the video and did not agree with that. She posted a stitch in response to Chloe's video, outing herself to people who would not have known otherwise. She says, yeah, this was me, but I don't think that I was bullying you and I didn't start any of this drama. You're the one that started because you posted stuff for sale in a buy and sell group and specifically said you weren't going to sell to people in Texas. I was just trying to give you advice and tell you that I thought that was tacky and not a good decision and you could be missing out on, like, for example, cosplayers or people who might want to buy it out of Texas. Christina also says generally she considers it tacky to make TikToks in your princess outfits as the princess because it ruins the magic for kids, and that she thinks Chloe's video in response to her comments in the private group was also tacky, like why are you taking it to this public level? Now this doesn't stay up very long. Christina deletes the stitch pretty quickly and then posts a much longer video saying a lot of the same points but with more detail and adding a few additional points in. She makes a point to say that she's been in this industry for a really long time, and when she started out and she was like a teenager, she was mean, and she was like a mean girl, which is something that Chloe had brought up in her initial video. She said she's gone through a lot of work on herself. She's, you know, as she's gotten older and seen more and run this business, it's taught her a lot, and that she's really been working on herself and she's come out of that and she's a better person. She reiterates that she doesn't think she's been bullying Chloe, that she doesn't want drama with Chloe, and that she was just trying to offer her advice since she's older and does have more experience in the industry. She again says that she thinks it takes away from like character integrity if you make TikToks as Disney princesses, but this time qualifies it a whole bunch and is like, I know lots of people that do, and if you do it and you make money, that's great. I just choose not to do it. And she again brings up she just thought it was like an unprofessional move to say you won't ship to people in Texas. But she also brings up at this point that apparently someone who worked at her business went and did a photo shoot with Chloe and then was subsequently let go. And she talks about those two things as though they are distinct, and she's trying to say they weren't related. She doesn't explicitly say this, but to me this was very heavily implying that Christina thought Chloe not shipping to Texas was specifically a way of saying I'm not going to sell to Christina, and that the reason for that was because Christina thinks Chloe is mad at Christina because she thinks Christina fired this girl just for working with Chloe. Again, she doesn't state that outright, but I'm pretty sure that's where that's going. To me, when you look at them side by side, the second video feels like a PR revised version of the first video from Christina, meaning she didn't like the optics of the first one because she was clearly like kind of pissed off in the first one. Whereas in the second one, she's doing like the older, wiser, let's have rational heads prevail kind of approach. She even says in the second video that she knew how young Chloe was when she initially responded, and that as the older person, she should have taken that into consideration and not gotten upset. So Chloe responds to that one now. And Chloe has screenshots this time. Chloe starts off the second video by being like, I'm so glad that you've been working on yourself herself and that things have gotten better. Has that happened since 2 days ago by chance? Because that's how recently I have screenshots of you. Chloe quickly says the not shipping to Texas thing had nothing to do with Christina. It had to do with a completely different situation with a different business, and had screenshots that supported that story because she told that to other sellers in the Texas area. But she very quickly pivots to the fact that allegedly Christina has been a huge problem in the princess industry for the entire time that she's been in the industry, which is like a decade. The main things being that one, allegedly Christina has been very consistently a high school mean girl for her entire career, and two, she's been very well known for, and there are many documented instances of her being very sanctimonious and calling people out for specific behaviors, which she then participates in. Starting with the mean girl stuff, the thing that sparked all of this, Chloe has screenshots of, which is specifically Chloe trying to sell things, and anytime that she specifically writes that she's not going to sell to Texas, Christina comments over and over and over again, which again makes me think that Christina thought the not selling to Texas people thing was about her and she was taking personal offense to it. But she also escalates a lot. Like, she's shitting on the stuff that she's selling. She's shitting on Chloe for posting on TikTok and ruining the magic for kids. She shits on Chloe for having a TikTok that went viral about her period underwear exploding inside her mermaid fin when she was playing Ariel one time, which is a video that went viral, but there's no blood in it. Like, the kids didn't see blood, according to Chloe. Nothing escaped the tail. But what's the response to that? Like, I'm sorry I menstruated and still needed to make money. I personally really dislike it when women go after other women for issues related to menstruation and other things that we cannot control. But the thing that really blew me away about this, beyond even like the literal screenshots that Chloe showed of Christina acting this way in the last week, were the raw number of people in the comments who said, I know who this is, I know what she does, I have stories. People who also had issues with her on Facebook, other party princess businesses who have had issues with her, employees who have had issues with her, people who worked with her at Disney who had issues with her, people who auditioned for stuff at Disney and had issues with her. So many. And also I got so many direct DMs of people being like, I have stuff on her. Like, this reminds me of the Wicked World's Fair Jeff Mock stuff. Like, this does not just happen. Giving Christina the absolute benefit of the doubt that she really is trying to be better and maybe is just still on that journey, there is a long, long way to go still, because she has left like a tornado path in her wake. Then on top of that, we've got all the hypocrisy stuff. One is, again, the don't post on TikTok as a princess, it ruins the magic, when she quite literally had tons of that content up until a couple days ago when she deleted it all when this all started. Two is she got really sanctimonious about inflating prices of things to sell in the buy and sell group. So like, she literally made posts calling specific people out for like, you can buy this on AliExpress. She literally said AliExpress for like $4 or $5 and you're charging $45. Chloe called her out for literally doing the exact same thing. Christina claimed this was wholesale, but that's not how wholesale works. Wholesale is when you buy a bunch and that's why you get it cheaper. You can buy an individual piece for $4 on AliExpress, literally the exact same website that you shit on the other person for. To be fair, Chloe says, look, if you're gonna drop ship, just don't be a dick about it to other people then. And the third relates to a rule within the princess community, which is that white actresses should not be playing princesses of color. And this has to do with the fact that the kids they are performing for think these are actually the princesses. They don't think that they're like people in costumes. So if you're a young child and your whole life you've only ever had Jasmine as the one princess that's your ethnicity, and then a white woman comes in playing Jasmine, that can like talk about ruining the magic, and it can really break their heart. Again, Christina tore someone apart for doing this. Again, Christina did this and then sent this huge diatribe trying to justify it to another POC princess actress in the groups who saw it and was upset. It was not a good look. But the thing that's really killing me is the way Christina has been responding to this since this whole situation kicked off. This is alleged. She has been messaging everyone that she can see in the community who's in any way gotten near this. She's like going through the comments with a fine-tooth comb, trying to do damage control, it looks like, but from what I can see, not in any way taking any accountability for the things that she's done. And she has been constantly messaging Chloe about the legal action she claims she's going to take against Chloe because of this. She claims she has a legal team that's not only building a case against Chloe for something, because I'll tell you, it's not defamation to say, I didn't like this thing that I can prove you said. But also she's claiming that her legal team is going through all of the comments and potentially implying she's going to be suing people for saying things in the comments. Christina, I can guarantee you your alleged response is ruining the magic. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the ongoing epidemic of high school mean girl behavior in the princess community. Today we're talking about something a little bit on the heavier side that's come out in the last few days in the tabletop role-playing game community. No one has been physically harmed that I am aware of. However, I do want to warn that the content we're going to discuss involves emotional manipulation and, we'll say, mistreatment, as well as risk to physical health. Starting from the top, tabletop RPGs can be thought of as Dungeons and Dragons and Friends. These are games where you come together with a few of your friends, build characters, one person acts as the game master or dungeon master and takes you through an adventure that you guys all go through together, and you have a lot of fun. If you weren't aware, Dungeons and Dragons is absolutely not the only one. There's a whole host of them. So D&D is one of many games within the tabletop RPG space. Some people only play D&D, and some people play a whole host of different stuff. And like almost any other niche sphere you can think of, there are also content creators who specialize in tabletop RPG content. Basic how-tos, tips for being a game master, how to build narratives, keep a story moving when maybe you have weird players doing weird shit. There's a lot of content where people literally just get a group of well-known creators together to play games over a period of weeks. So they'll do a season of a show, which is them playing an entire campaign of a particular tabletop RPG, and you get to watch your favorite creators work together and do fun stuff. And some people just use the IP of these different games to make fun creative content like animations. And as with any other space, there are more well-known creators. For example, JoeCat, someone we've talked about previously, made a ton of D&D content and was well known for it. And by becoming a larger creator in this space, you can get extra opportunities to be involved in different projects and be brought on to events. So, what happened? One very prominent creator in the tabletop RPG space is a man by the name of Gabe Hicks, who goes by Gabe James Games across all of his socials, or did. Gabe is a person who has been in the space for a number of years and, again, as I mentioned, was very well known. They were at the point where, in addition to creating their own content for the tabletop gaming space, they were also involved in a lot of collaborative projects with other prominent creators, and they were featured attendees at major events, most recently, for example, at PAX East. PAX East ended this past Sunday, the 24th of March, and on Monday, the 25th, multiple people came out saying that Gabe had been in long-term, intimate relationships with all of them simultaneously while lying to each of them about it. The three people who initially came forward with their accounts of this situation are Cam, Jillian, and Maisie. I personally think it is very important for their stories to come from them, so I am not going to summarize their videos, but I will talk about the overall themes of what all three said. First is that all three were having some level of intimate relationship with Gabe over at least some overlapping period of time. And not a week, didn't end it soon enough before moving to the next. These were concurrent. Second is that Gabe habitually lied to and manipulated them and all of his friends, everyone around him, to keep this going and keep them from knowing about one another. Three is that part of that tactic included viciously defaming their characters to everyone else around them, including other prominent people in the industry, because again, Gabe had significant connections within the content creator space for tabletop RPGs. Now, thankfully, Cam does not rely on this industry to generate an income. However, Maisie and Jillian do. And for Jillian, unfortunately, this doesn't stop with them. Their partner, Matt, was also targeted by Gabe. And this is where it gets even worse somehow, because at the very least, Cam and Jillian, if not also Maisie, I'm not entirely sure, Cam and Jillian are polyamorous. Jillian's partner, Matt, was fully aware and consenting to Jillian's relationship with Gabe. There was quite literally no reason to do any of this. And yet, Gabe actively chose to lie to all of these people, as well as everyone else he knew in the space and everyone in his life, about what these people were to him and what their intentions were. He routinely told each partner that the other ones were obsessed fans that didn't understand boundaries. I am hearing claims he actively had people blacklisted because he didn't want certain people who were content creators to be in the same room together with him because it would out his lies. And just generally to cover his ass, he can't say, oh, these people are crazy, and then say, yeah, I'll work with them. If any of his partners question him about a potentially overly close interaction with one of his other secret partners, he would weaponize their mental health and trauma against them. Timeline-wise, it seems like Cam was the first person to figure this out on Sunday, the last day of PAX East. They've mentioned that PAX East as a whole was a very uncomfortable experience for them because Jillian and their partner Matt were also at PAX East, and because they didn't know about each other, Jillian's interactions with Gabe were distressing to Cam because Gabe had told Cam that Jillian was an obsessed fan, and I believe the same thing about Matt. Once Cam found out the truth on Sunday, they very quickly connected with Jillian and I assume Maisie. And they did very quickly go public with this on Monday, both to see if there were any other people out there who had been in an intimate relationship with Gabe that they did not know about, so that they could inform them of what the situation was, but also because they realized that anyone who had been intimately involved with Gabe while he's had this very high position of power within the community was probably hurt in terms of their career within the community by Gabe. That is a huge part of why I wanted to talk about this. I keep thinking about this tweet from the archaeology story I did a couple episodes back, which basically said that the initial misinformation got way, way further than the retraction that came out later of that same information. My expectation is that given how big this has gotten, anybody with prominent decision-making capabilities within the tabletop gaming sphere understands not to work with Gabe any further, and hopefully understands that if they had been blackballing anyone on Gabe's recommendation, they will no longer do so. But if even one prominent person who maybe didn't know for some reason finds out because of this, I will be happy. But my hope is that we can go beyond that. And unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. As it turns out, allegedly, Gabe has been doing this for years. 2 more people have come forward saying that Gabe basically did the same thing to them several years back. And then a 6th person has come forward, I believe, saying that they had maybe a casual, intimate interaction with him, I believe recently when he would have been with Cam, Jillian, and Maisie. And I'll be frank, I believe there's probably more. This is very clearly a thing that he does. And I don't believe I said it before, but at least Cam has said that they were engaging in intimate activities which they would not have agreed to with Gabe if they had known Gabe had been with other partners due to their safety. Just really gross shit all around. When this first came out, Gabe put out a video on his TikTok page where he chalks up this whole situation to miscommunication on his part and lack of communication. That is an interesting way to say actively and maliciously lying for years. He then says he's really sorry if his actions hurt anybody and he's getting a therapist, so it's all gonna be okay. As you can imagine, it didn't go over that well. As of now, he has completely nuked his entire social presence, which, awesome, good. Let's keep it that way. Don't come back. The absolute magnitude of negative impact this man has had on so many people's lives is insane. The one thing I will give Gabe credit for is the fact that he came out with that initial video, made it so that nobody attacked these 3 people for coming forward, and also made it more easy for other people to come forward with their stories about Gabe. Good job, I guess. In addition to the support that I'm seeing pretty overwhelmingly directed at these people, there seems to be a bit of a budding conversation about whether polyamory is doomed to failure generally and whether or not it can ever actually work. But the response to that I'm seeing, which I do personally agree with, is that this situation is not a reflection of the failures of polyamory. Polyamory has its own set of landmines for sure, and there's always going to be a situation generally whenever you have more people involved with the thing, you're going to have more issues. But this doesn't touch on any of those actual issues. The issue here was this was unethical non-monogamy, and you may have heard polyamory is usually referred to as ethical non-monogamy. The reason that it's ethical is because everyone is informed and consenting to the situation as it stands, however it stands. No one was informed, and thus no one was able to be informed and consenting in this situation. So this has nothing to do with polyamory as a practice. And in fact, part of the problem is he told at least Maisie and Cam that he was single and or only with them, meaning not polyam. Anyway, please go and support these people, especially if you are interested in the tabletop RPG community. I've tagged Cam, Jillian, and Maisie's TikToks below. Please also go consider following them on Twitter, as well as Matt, Jillian's partner. At the very least, just listening to their stories gives them back some of the power and respect that was taken from them by Gabe, and simply adding to their following count gives them more visibility within the TTRPG space in terms of content creation, which can hopefully reverse at least some of the damage Gabe inflicted on their careers. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about a really concerning series of alleged behaviors from a very prominent member of the tabletop role-playing game community named Gabe Hicks. I don't normally say this, but please go watch and support the people involved. If you're not familiar with this, they could use all the help they can get. Today I have my corporate cosplay on, and that's because we're talking about a situation that's happening in the recruitment space community, people who work in and around hiring, and this is happening primarily on LinkedIn. Based on views, I bet that the vast majority of you have not seen this yet, and I wanted to cover it not only because it is actually interesting from a tea perspective in terms of some of the back and forth that happens here, but also because the topic this whole drama surrounds is incredibly relevant to anyone looking to get a job now or in the immediate future at least. There are 2 primary people at the center of this. The first is a person named Robin Story. Robin is the owner of a company called Storyline Resumes, which, as you might have guessed, is a resume generation company. You would go to them and hire them to then consult with you about your experience and all this stuff, and they would generate a resume for you to then take into the job market. And they also offer similar kind of adjacent capabilities, like they can help you redo your LinkedIn profile, they can help you with your cover letter, they can help you make a biography, they have coaching lessons for like executive level tracks or upward mobility. There's not a ton of detail on the website about what the coaching sessions entail, so I don't have a lot of detail there. Robin herself also has a very prominent profile. She has almost 1 million followers on LinkedIn. That's such a weird thing to think about, but it makes a ton of sense given what her business is. LinkedIn is exactly where I would expect to see the most from somebody who does what she does. And from what I can see, part of the reason she's gained such a following is she does a lot of what's called hero posting. You see this type of thing a lot on Facebook as well. It's like these very inspirational, uplifting stories. They use a lot of heavy, like motivational language. In Robin's case, a lot of those refer to supposed client interactions that she's had through her company. So she's using this as a marketing tactic, and it works very well for her. Now, on the other side of this, we have Dan from HR. Dan is an HR consultant. He's somebody a company's HR team will hire to come in and help kind of possibly revamp their recruitment and hiring process. He also does have social presence himself with about 40,000 followers on LinkedIn, and he does have a TikTok profile as well, which I have tagged below. Dan's content is much more tactical than Robin's. He talks about very specific, in the weeds things about the hiring process, as well as what candidates can do and be on the lookout for when they're looking for a job. So, what happened? Since Dan works as a consultant, his income is not consistent. It depends on the number of engagements he has at any given point. So to supplement that, in his words, he occasionally takes on job search clients to help fill in those gaps. One of the services he offers is resume review and remake. And what he claims he started to see was over and over again, people coming to him, asking him, what's wrong with this resume that I paid a whole bunch of money to have professionally made because it's not getting me anywhere further? Is it the resume or is it something else? And according to Dan, while he is well used to seeing companies that like market themselves as being resume makers make bad resumes, like there are certain ones that are just on the list, he's been noticing more and more, especially in the past like year or so, that ones coming from Robin Story's company are showing up as problematic ones he has to fix. He claims that he's seen enough of this from people who have come to him secondarily after getting resumes from Robin Story's team that he DM'd her about it and was like, you should be aware of this. And then a couple weeks ago, he made an actual post on LinkedIn saying, I've reached out to her about this multiple times and she hasn't said anything back, so I'm posting this here. He basically says in the post, look, I know that Robin and her team are known on this platform as being like a go-to for getting a good resume. Here has been my experience with this. People have come to me who have paid hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a resume from Robin Story's team, and they are very expensive, those packages. Like the lowest one is like $500. And Dan claims that as he's taking a look at these resumes that people have paid so much money for and haven't had any success with, he's seeing the same problems over and over again. These problems really come down to the fact that, according to Dan, Robin Story's team is generating resumes that follow a very old style, one from like the late aughts, early 2010. Dan says that they're visually very standout and very beautiful and have some really unique formatting, and all of that was fine 10 years ago. But as of right now, that's very harmful for most candidates. The main reason being that they are not well suited to be easily read by an applicant tracking system or an ATS. ATSs are used by basically all companies at this point to filter through resumes and rank them and pull the best ones out. That's how they then decide who to give initial callbacks to. And if your resume is not formatted properly, which means it has to be very simple in nature, then it's not going to make it anywhere in that system and your resume will just get lost. Dan also calls out how text heavy these are. Like even if they get past the ATS system, looking at them is kind of painful, and makes a point that the information that's most important to the recruitment team who's looking through your resume is not well presented or highlighted. You have to really search to find it. And unfortunately, when it comes to hiring, the ease with which you make the process for the HR team is actually super important. These are people who largely have no actual connection to the job itself. Someone else is the hiring manager. They've been told, look for these 5 things, and they've been going through possibly hundreds of resumes each day looking for those 5 things. You want to make that as easy for them as humanly possible, and this format, according to Dan, is not one that helps, and my personal understanding agrees with that. It needs to be much, much more simplistic than this and not nearly as text heavy and more highlighting on the things that actually matter. So Dan makes this post and he thinks he's probably going to get some sort of flack from Robin's followers or fans or whatever, because she apparently has a very dedicated group of people who support her. What he did not expect was for Robin to now reach out to him about this post. She clearly took this very personally, and in my opinion, it was a very defensive message. She says his post was bullying. She says that he only made the post to help benefit his business. She implies there's some grounds for legal action based on his post, but that she's like above that. The only piece of her message that does actually speak to the content of Dan's post is specifically that she says that they do provide an ATS compatible version of the resume in addition to the more stylistic kind, which apparently is kind of their brand design. Though Dan showed some examples and some of them literally just had Microsoft Smart Art in them. I have never seen that in my life, and I would potentially expect something like that from somebody right out of college, but not for an executive level. But then again, maybe I'm literally wrong. Dan then responds to Robin and is like, look, I don't make my business doing this. I've been doing this on the side, but like, that's not what I do. There's no real benefit to me about this. And moreover, I'm concerned about the fact that I've been trying to get in touch with you for a really long time about this, because I got, according to Dan, at least 30 people who needed to have their resumes remade who had originally paid hundreds of dollars to your company to have this done. And if it were me, I would want to know why they weren't happy so I could fix it. He points out, I think rightfully, that she seems more focused in the perception of her as like good than she does about whether or not she's actually helping people. She responds with like Shakespeare level sarcasm, which is honestly pretty funny, and goes on to say, we have so many clients, some are bound to be dissatisfied with what they get, and that's what comes with the business, but that they have been a successful business, according to Robin, for so many years because they do know what their clients need. Dan responds one more time, reiterating some of the same points, and I believe at this point Robin blocked him. Now Dan has been recounting this whole situation on TikTok. I've been showing screenshots of that as I go. And because he's been talking about it, he goes on to claim in his third video talking about this situation that he's had hundreds of people reach out to him and say, I have had an issue with her, and I just was scared to say anything, honestly, because she's so big. He also went out and found that there were reviews within the last 6 months from the Better Business Bureau of people being like, yeah, this was not it for me. Point being, assumedly, that maybe this is more of an issue than Robin may wish to think it is. And then finally, Dan posted that somebody allegedly reached out to him who had been looking at jobs at Robin's business. And when you look at the rates, you're talking about like a 10 to 15% margin of the several $100s that comes in from somebody hiring them to do the resume for them goes to the actual resume writer, which is a whole separate thing, but also concerning. I'll say that based on what I can see, I think Robin is aiming for a very executive, very bespoke interview process level client. I think they offer this for anyone, but given the price point associated with it, like who in their first job or two is going to pay $600 for a resume? I'm assuming her business model is really meant for the people who's going to have somebody hand their resume directly to the hiring manager who's like the C-suite level person. And the reality is that's a completely different thing. And so they don't care about ATS. They don't care about any of this other stuff. They want to look sophisticated because also those folks are older and also look for the same type of thing that was big years ago when they were coming up in the business world. But if you're an average worker, Dan's stuff's going to be way more useful to you. The big takeaway is beware of these resume companies. Odds are you can make your own great resume using a template and simple tips. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the rare LinkedIn beef occurrence, which happened between two different people who are involved in resume generation and helping people find jobs. TLDR on that being, please don't spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars to have a resume made. You can make a very decent one with some simple tips and a simple template for free. I've been pretty busy with work this week, so I didn't have time to look into anything too deep, but this came across my FYP, and I think it's one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. So we're going to talk about something going on in the anime community. It's very lighthearted. It'll be a nice way to jump into your weekend. One very common discussion point in the anime community is whether or not you like to watch your anime in English or in Japanese. This is commonly referred to as dub versus sub, dub meaning English dubbed from the original Japanese translation, or sub meaning in Japanese with subtitles. Now, I'm old, so back in the day, almost everybody got into anime in like middle school by watching Sailor Moon or Dragon Ball Z on Cartoon Network, and that was obviously dubbed in English. Then the natural progression was you usually ended up watching it more in Japanese because there was less English dub available, but also the quality of the English dub wasn't nearly as good because it just wasn't as big of a market and they just didn't put that much money into it. So then it became this like elitist, snobby, gatekeepy, like, of course I watch it in Japanese. I have class. And then people went way too far and they'd all start taking Japanese so that they could turn off the subtitles. It became a whole thing. Nowadays, thankfully, because anime has become such a big market in the US, we have much, much higher quality dubs. I will say that my default is still to lean into sub over dub, and I wait to hear if the dub is really good. Two primary reasons for that. One is that if it's a bad voice acting in Japanese, I'm far less likely to notice, and I can enjoy the other parts of it than if it were in English, and it would be very obvious if it was bad. And two, anime is still predominantly written for Japanese audiences, and culturally there are things that, like in the way people communicate and the way they act in anime, that makes sense in Japanese but does not translate well when you try and do the same thing in English. It just sounds ridiculous, even if it wouldn't sound ridiculous to a Japanese person watching it in Japanese, if that makes sense. So watching the sub lets me kind of like gloss over that stuff if it's happening, and I can just focus on the stuff that might be really good, like the story or the characterization, stuff like that. But again, it's really, really great to see that we're getting such better quality dubs, and we're seeing the rise of really good voice actors specifically for anime related stuff. And recently, not only have the actual voice actors themselves been showing up more, like on TikTok, there's a trend where the voice actors just say, I'm a voice actor, and then read the voice part, and you can see all the different parts that they do. But I've even seen just like trends that I love around particular pieces of anime where the voice acting is really, really strong, like that one from Jujutsu Kaisen that's so great.
Find it yet?
Sorry, but I ate that thing.
Really?
I did.
So it's great on all sides because we're getting better quality overall, but then also these people get well known for the quality of work that they do, the same way that like TV actors and movie actors do, which raises their profile in a way that voice actors have a little bit of trouble with historically because they're not physically being seen, and hopefully helps them get more gigs. So what happened? One anime which is highly anticipated coming into 2024 and is currently in the process of closing out its first season is called Solo Leveling. It originally debuted as a web novel in 2016, then it was adapted into a webtoon, and then from that it was adapted into an anime, which is currently running. So even though this is its first anime season, it does have an established fan base, and this is usually the case. As we've discussed before, usually anime is based off of manga that people have already been reading. Now, I haven't watched or read Solo Leveling myself, and I'll be honest with you, it's because I thought it was an isekai. Isekai is a category of anime and manga where a character is taken out of their universe and plopped into another one, and either it's something they're familiar with and they get to use their knowledge from, like they got put into their favorite book or their favorite video game, that type of thing, and they can use their knowledge of the thing to guide what they're going to do, or it's about them adapting to that situation because they don't know where they are and it's like a fish out of water thing, which in theory I love, but the genre is incredibly bloated at this point, and there are a lot of other tropes that go along with it that I do not appreciate. But in researching this, I found out that I am actually wrong, and Solo Leveling does not appear to be an isekai. It's more of an actual true fantasy. All of the hunting and fighting that he does happens in the world he actually lives in. So I will probably check it out. It seems pretty neat. Anyway, in the webtoon, presumably, there is a very pivotal part of the story where the main character says a particular line. I'm not going to say what it is, just in case it's spoilers. It's a simple line, but it clearly has a lot of weight to people who have read the story, and they were very much anticipating seeing this played out in the anime season 1 that's coming out now. Now, when an anime is actively releasing, the Japanese version comes out before the English dub. And apparently, not to sound like all K-pop, the delivery of that particular line got very mixed reactions from existing fans. Basically, the line was very slightly changed. A few people were upset about, most people were not. The main thing was a good number of people didn't think it had like the intense weight of the moment behind it the way they read it to have when they read the webtoon. Now, this same episode has not come out in the English dub yet, and the voice actor for the main character of Solo Leveling has a presence on TikTok. Notably, he's also very well loved for his performance thus far. People are really, really digging it. He's got a really low, kind of rumbly voice, very corpse husband vibes. So people were already very much anticipating hearing him say this line, but now that's even more so because a lot of people weren't satisfied with the Japanese version. And because he's on TikTok, they can just say that to him directly. And he did, in fact, notice, it turns out. Because then he came out with a video and was like, look, I know you guys are very excited about this episode coming up, and I know you're all very concerned and focused about me saying this particular line. However, I need you guys to chill a bit because I'm getting some pretty intense comments. He's like, I totally get that people are asking about this, and if you do so politely, that's totally fine. But if you keep sending me threats, who's doing that, by the way, or are mean to me about this, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show screenshots of the examples he gave, but if you don't want spoilers, just listen because I won't actually say what what he said. So look away now if you're worried about it. But he proceeds to say that he will give basically the cringiest, most awful performance he possibly can. He gives some horrific examples and voices them out of things that he'll say instead that get the general vibe across of what that line is supposed to be, but just the absolute worst stuff. Screenshots are gone, you can look again. He's like, look, I can ruin this for you, so leave me alone. I absolutely love that he made this video. I mean, obviously he probably can't do any of those actual adaptations of that line, and he probably will try and do it as well as he can. It's only going to hurt him, really, if he doesn't do it well. But I do really like it as a good, hey, these are real people reminder for people. You are saying these things to a real person who exists and is going to see them. The internet at large needs as many reminders of that as humanly possible, but certainly anybody who is like deep in a fandom, because nothing will make you forget that other people are real humans than being obsessed with something. But also logically, I don't get it. Like, do you think threatening him is going to motivate him? Bold of me to assume logic is involved, I know. But as class response from him, truly. And some people have already edited some of those into the animation from the Japanese version. So like, what would it be like if this is what he said? And they are amazing. But the final dubbed episode of season 1 of Solo Leveling is expected to release, I believe, on the 13th of this month. So we shall see. Guess I gotta go watch it now. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the voice actor for the main character of the Solo Leveling anime, which is currently finishing up its first season, and his absolutely perfect response to fans who are a little too rabid and starting to get unreasonable with him. Today we're going to talk about something that's currently unfolding and causing a lot of strain in the Vocaloid community. Now you may not know what that word means, but you are more likely to have heard of Hatsune Miku, who is a Vocaloid performer. Vocaloid is the technology which powers performers like Hatsune Miku's voices. Vocaloid is literally the name of the software product that is actually made by Yamaha, which creates the synthetic voice. So they're not purely made from scratch. They are based off of real people's voices. In the case of Hatsune Miku, it's based off of a Japanese voice actress. Hatsune Miku is by far the most popular and prominent of the Vocaloid singers, but there are actually a ton of them. Hatsune Miku herself debuted in 2007. She's a 16-year-old girl, still, because she is digital. Also, because she's digital, she doesn't have to have someone come in and sing her songs. Thus, she has a crap ton of songs. Someone on Reddit made a master Google sheet that lists all the songs in different importance and who sings them of the Vocaloids. Most of them are Miku. Fascinating stuff. I would highly recommend you check it out. If you just Google it, you'll find it. Now, something that has additionally become very well associated with Hatsune Miku and assumedly her co-stars in the years since she started making music, in addition to her music itself, is her performances. Obviously, she's not really there, so it seems like it would be a pretty boring performance. It is not. Krypton Future Media, which is the company that owns Hatsune Miku and a number of her co-stars, puts on very well known to be very fantastical shows. This of course involves lots of visual display, lights, spectacle, etc. But a key part of that is that the performances are holograms of the actual performers. They want to create as much immersion as possible, and the quality of it is usually very good. Like, look at this. It's cool. I really like these shots. You can really see, like, that's so cool. It looks really good. Like, this is a shitty video. It looks really good. I bet it looks baller live. That video was taken in 2016, so like even then you get that it was really good quality and it was really immersive. Now, as you might expect, this didn't just stay in Japan because that's cool as fuck. A lot of international fans have gotten into Hatsune Miku and Vocaloids generally and have wanted to go to these concerts, so seeing the opportunity there, a thing called Miku Expo started in 2014. This is quite literally just an international concert where both Hatsune Miku herself and then a bunch of her fellow performers, I guess, would put on a concert. Traditionally, you'd have the hologram, you'd have all of the spectacles, you'd have actual performers, but also there was a live band. So yes, the vocals are Vocaloid, but other than that, I mean, they are putting as much into this as possible, and it looks, again, very cool. So, what happened? Miku Expo 2024 is currently ongoing and just made its way into the Americas. So again, this is just, think of it as a tour. This particular one is a big deal for a number of reasons. First being that it is the 10th anniversary of Miku Expo, because again, it started in 2014. The second is that this had to be, like most things, discontinued during the pandemic. And for a lot of people, it'll be the first time they get to see Hatsune Miku live and actually experience this very cool thing. And then on top of that, the Vocaloid fandom and thus the Hatsune Miku fandom has actually gotten really, really big in just the past few years. A major contributor for this was a mobile rhythm game which got very popular since 2020 called Project Sekai. So altogether, there are way more fans than there used to be. And this is the first opportunity a good chunk of them have ever had to be able to see this in person. And this is like a huge part of what people have always loved about it. So they've been hearing about how cool it is and watching videos of it for years. So they're really hype. And they're also willing to pay a lot of money because there's a lot of attention on these seats. And this is kind of where the first problems start to arise. The entire 2024 series of North America concerts is being managed by both the actual owners, Krypton Future Media, as well as Crunchyroll. And initially there wasn't any concern about this. Krypton Future Media knows what they're doing. They've been doing this for years. Since Crunchyroll was managing selling the tickets, they did it through their normal ticket sales system, which puts you in a tier list based on how engaged with Crunchyroll you are. First, you get Crunchyroll premium people got access to tickets first, then regular Crunchyroll users, I guess, who had a standard login. Then there were regular pre-sale tickets and then general sale tickets. But Crunchyroll didn't limit the number of tickets for each tier. So by the time it got to general sales, they were all gone. And basically what happens is scalpers came in, bought as many tickets as they possibly could, because again, all you have to do to get into that top tier is sign up for Crunchyroll Premium for 1 month and then you can get in. Then they're turning around and selling the tickets for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And this affected so many people. I heard estimates all over the place for what people were paying for these just to be able to go, like they were just biting the bullet and doing it. But a range would be like $200 to $500 was reasonable. So, okay, not a great way to start, but if the concerts are as they have been historically, it should still work out and be amazing experience, right? This is where we get to the main problem. This is the thing that's been going around everywhere. They took away the hologram. They replaced the previous technology that had different lights going through screens, I think for the most part, to create like a 3D rendering of her with a literal LED screen. Not like an immersive, really good LED screen. They were backlighting the thing. Like it was very, very obviously not the same as what I showed you earlier, which again was from an actual concert. And they hadn't said a single thing to anyone who bought tickets that there would be any kind of change, let alone this massive of a change of like the pivotal thing that people come to see. On top of that, the band is like almost hidden according to some people. Like they're not literally hidden or behind the stage, but they're like further back and kind of in the dark and blocked and not given the same level of introduction and highlight as they have been historically. And people really do love the band. They, again, are the only live aspect of the show. On top of that, they actually switched the band out from the people who historically have been the band. It's always been these 4 people. And again, without saying anything to anyone, they replaced them with a new lineup of people to play the live music. This new band was great. To be very clear, people were just disappointed because they were very much looking forward to seeing the band that has always existed. And again, they weren't notified that there would have been any change. But on top of all the other stuff, it just hits harder. It's like another thing. Then on top of that, they like viciously understocked the merch. The most important thing merch-wise that should be stocked is the light stick, because you need a specific type of light stick. They won't let in any light stick. You have to have special ones that won't mess with the hologram usually. So if they want to have a light stick, they want that one, both because this is their first time and that's the iconic thing that you always see in the videos. You saw everybody kind of throwing them back and forth, but also because you can't just be like, well, I've got mine, unless you have a very specific kind. So if they're going to make sure to have anything stocked, it should be this. And allegedly for a several thousand person venue, they brought 95 light sticks. People were waiting in merch lines in the rain outside the venue for like over an hour to get these light sticks, and then didn't realize they had sold out like immediately. It's just all around not a very good showing for Crunchyroll. And general consensus is that this is very likely a Crunchyroll problem and not a Krypton Future Media problem, because Krypton Future Media has been doing this for years. This is Crunchyroll's first year, and based on how they handled the tickets, it doesn't exactly inspire a lot of confidence to believe that it wasn't them causing these other issues. The good news is there have been other instances where the LED screen, it turns out, was used, and it was used way better. Improving the set dressing of the screen makes a huge, huge difference. Don't light it from the back, and also you should be showing the band members people want to see them. The LED screens themselves are allegedly phenomenal, like very, very good. So it's not an image quality issue. It's a fact that it doesn't look like they're there. And that's good news because it means that for the rest of this tour where people are now dreading, like, what am I going to do? Can I sell these tickets? The ticket prices dropped. Like if you go on Ticketmaster now, you can get tickets for like under $200. But this is stuff that theoretically should be pretty easy to fix if we can just get the right feedback in front of the right people at Crunchyroll. Twitter and Reddit are the best places to check out if you want to be part of the ongoing conversation about this because you are thinking of selling your tickets. But I do think that if you very kindly start really sending attention, maybe on Twitter, to Crunchyroll folks, you might find things improve as the tour goes on. But I do want to say that despite all of this, I've seen tons of people say that they still had a phenomenal time. But good luck. I really hope Crunchyroll fixes this for you guys. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the so far somewhat disappointing show that Hatsune Miku and friends are putting on throughout North America at Miko Expo 2024, which is currently using an LED screen when historically it's always been a hologram, alongside other issues. Today we're talking about something which has actually been going on for nearly a year at this point, and I've actually been tagged in a number of different videos relating to this, but I think with the developments that have happened in 2024 specifically, it makes it more important to talk about. We're talking about NaNoWriMo. I don't think I can tell you how many times it took for me to say that cleanly. NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month, which is traditionally in November of every year. And it doesn't exist as just like an appreciation time period, like it's not like National Donut Day or anything like that. It's always represented a project that people have chosen to come together and do something around. The project itself originated in 1999 when 21 people in San Francisco said, all right, we're all gonna try and write a novel in 1 month. Who can write the best? And it was a big success that people really enjoyed, so it's picked up more and more ever since, and it's actually become a full-fledged nonprofit organization since then. NaNoWriMo, the organization today, is now one which helps facilitate groups and communication, connecting people with one another, helping provide support to people. They run and organize forums, they organize events, they help kind of keep the whole National Novel Writing Month thing structured. But it's not something that you have to pay for. As a nonprofit, they operate entirely off of tax-deductible donations. There are rules about how you can engage, so specifically in October, usually of each year, the boards, the forums open up for people to start talking about what they want to do and kind of get in connection with other people to maybe do writing groups with, etc., all to prep for November, which is National Novel Writing Month. And then as of November 1st, they are allowed to start writing their novels, and they have to write either a 50,000 word novel or 50,000 words of a novel that they will complete as part of the competition. And there are prizes. The goal of this really is to get people to actually sit down and do the thing, write it. Like, even if it's not great, like, you don't have to edit it, you don't have to worry about that. Like, just get it down on paper, because that can be a really, really hard part of writing a novel, is literally just sitting down and doing it. Get it written, you can go back and finish it again later, which is very cool. If you're going to be a writer, I really like this, especially because of the way that it acts as like a support community for people who do this. I'm someone who truly hates long form writing. I don't write scripts for these either. I literally wing it, and that's why it takes me like an hour to 2 hours to film every single one, even though they're under 10 minutes. So overall, a very cool idea for an organization. I love that it's a free service that anyone can take advantage of, that encourages creativity and exploration of writing as a skill or as a hobby. Now, the way NaNoWriMo is structured as an organization involves a number of different groups. First, we have kind of at the top would be the board of directors. They are financially invested probably in this nonprofit. Even though it is a nonprofit, it doesn't mean people don't make salaries on it or have some sort of, ironically, profit from it, but they oversee things, but they're not in the day-to-day. Then next we have the NaNoWriMo staff. These are, again, paid people who work for NaNoWriMo. Again, even though it's a nonprofit, they still get salaries. They keep the infrastructure up and running. They help manage and work in between the people who are leading things from regional aspects because they can't be in everything all the time, but they're looking at everything from a higher degree and they're more involved than the board is, which is functionally not at all, but they're still at a very high level overseeing and making sure that macro things are being taken care of. Then locally, there are a number of volunteers called municipal liaisons. These are people who say, I live in this area, this state, this city, etc., and I want to be the primary point person who works with the staff of NaNoWriMo, but I help, like I'm going to be the mod or help manage the forum for like my group. Those are the people who are really close to the ground, who are working directly with as many of the people actually participating in their region as possible to help make sure they're getting the support that they need, to help make sure meetups are happening, to do kickoff parties and like, yay, it's over parties when the month is over, things like that. Again, though, these are voluntary positions. So what happened? Last year, there was a pretty significant scandal because it turned out that there was a member of the staff of NaNoWriMo who was very inappropriately utilizing the power given to them by their position. I'm not going to go too into detail about what this person actually did, given that it is pretty serious in nature, but the key themes are, one, that he was inappropriately accessing and utilizing personal information of users of the site. So just people who were signing up to be as part of NaNoWriMo. He had access to that as part of the staff who was an admin on the website and was using that inappropriately, thus compromising the security of everyone. And second, and far more seriously, he was inappropriately communicating and interacting with underage people who were on the forums. What made this especially bad, though, was that allegedly, early last year, talking May of last year, this was repeatedly brought to the attention of the wider staff. So again, not the board, the staff of NaNoWriMo, and was ignored. There is another creator on here who I will tag who has gone over this far more in detail, but they have mentioned that it took the involvement of the FBI as well as the direct involvement of the boards in October to get anything done about this at all. And once the board was involved, they shut the whole thing down. The forums were locked, nobody could get in, and I think they have been locked ever since. Now, while this was obviously very disappointing, since the forums are a huge part of what NaNoWriMo as an organization is contributing to local people who are participating in this exercise, people were still happy that something was finally being done. The board fully removed and I believe IP banned the person who was taking advantage of their position within the staff. The IP ban being because I believe they were intentionally, allegedly making new accounts and trying to come back and continue to bother people. And then they claimed coming into 2024 that they were going to update a lot of their policies and a lot of their contracts to help ensure something like this does not happen again. Earlier in the year, the board announced a number of changes that were going to take place, which for the most part looked to be pretty good. For example, more thoroughly actually background checking anybody who comes in to volunteer or work as part of the organization. And there will be tighter restrictions on what is allowed on the forums themselves. For example, there won't be any on the main forum 18 under spaces anymore. Those will be strictly for the youth program, which has a different set of regulation around it. And individual members can no longer create specific discussion topics on the forums, which is a little weird, but I get what they're going for. But the thing the board didn't say anything about that everyone was still very upset about was, are you telling me that there's been no staff changes since last year? Like, yeah, we know the one guy's gone, but what about all the other staff who completely ignored us coming to them for months? They are apparently just still there. And then municipal liaisons all got a bunch of new contracts that they had to sign under a very tight time frame and that they were very much not encouraged to share in any way. Like apparently you were not able to screenshot, copy the link of, download, like anything, this document, which is shady already in itself, especially when the people who have been wronged by your misorganization are expressly asking for transparency. But despite all that, it's circulated anyway because life finds a way. And these contracts quite literally just say, anything that happens from now on is the municipal liaison's fault and you will take all responsibility. Oh, and you can't tell anybody if stuff happens. Any communication you have about anything related to this at all, you can't share with anyone ever. So they don't want to actually correct anything. They don't want to make things better with them. They just want to make it so that they can't be held responsible the next time it happens. Why would anyone sign that? Oh wait, it doesn't matter because once it leaked, they fired everybody anyway. In addition to November, there now are similar months within NaNoWriMo that are managed for April and July, and a whole bunch of municipal liaisons just absolutely lost all access at the beginning of April. A lot of them with no notice at all, because only the ones that were in good standing with NaNoWriMo got these updated contracts that were even worse, basically. This whole thing makes me really sad because clearly this organization was started from someone who truly loved what it was about and what it could do for people, and it very clearly no longer represents anything to do with any of that. These are people who now want to rely on free labor as much as possible. Again, the MLs are volunteers. They want to make as much money as they can and take no responsibility for anything and not rock the boat. They clearly don't actually care if people are getting hurt. They just care if they can minimize the impact to their own revenue. Because who would donate to this? The good news is the internet is large. There are a lot of places where you can still organize. I'll try and put some of them up here. A lot of them are local places you can look for to find something similar in your area. And a lot of these people have broken off to make their own groups of the same people. So if you have been involved in NaNoWriMo, connect with those same people and they'll tell you where to go. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. I don't personally play Warhammer, but I am extremely adjacent to it, so there was no way I wasn't going to cover this. Last time we talked about the ongoing series of concerning and questionable choices coming from the board of directors of NaNoWriMo, or National Novel Writing Month. I want to quickly make a clarifying statement for that story. Something that I didn't properly convey is that the staff as a whole is seen as a one unit acting in tandem due to the lack of transparency between the staff and the board and the members and the municipal liaison. Because of that, there is a lot of concern from the members and the MLs about who is trustworthy within the staff. Because from their perspective, last year, multiple people came to the staff with express true concerns about what this one person was doing, but nothing actually happened until things were escalated beyond the staff. It very well may be the case that there are members of the staff who truly tried to do absolutely everything they could and had their hands tied by the board the same way MLs are now having their hands tied. Certainly it does appear to be the board's MO. So I don't want to discount the idea that there are reportedly staff members who are trying very hard to do the right thing and are not able to because of restrictions that they can't control. It's just that from the member standpoint, you don't know who's a bad actor and who isn't. So, Warhammer. We've talked about Warhammer before. It is a tabletop strategy game where you use miniatures. You build armies, you play within the rules for those armies, and then you play your army against someone else's army one-on-one. Traditionally, there are other ways to play too. It's a neat hobby because you don't just buy like a ready-made army or like a set that has 2 armies in it and then play it with people as you want. You actually build your army, and I mean build it. You choose, physically build and paint your models with custom paint jobs, and the pieces can be custom. Like you can mix things around and make them what you want them to be. The world of Warhammer 40k takes place in this grimdark future where there are a bunch of different races all throughout the galaxy, and they're pretty much all at war with one another. And then there's this like big bad thing called the Warp, where there's like really bad guys in who are pretty much enemies to everyone. And then there's also this like wacky alien race that eats everything it comes across, that's got like massive armies outside the galaxy, and if those come in, that's gonna kill everybody. And then there's also like a whole shit ton of zombie robots that are waking up from their tombs now, and that's gonna kill everybody. There's a lot of shit going on. So there is a story, there is lore associated with Warhammer. And as I mentioned before, there's also rules for how each army is able to be played. The core aspects of both the lore and the gameplay for any particular race / army within that race is called a codex. And every number of years, the codexes get updated. These updates are editions, and right now, Warhammer 40k is in its 10th edition. Each edition is a new set of books or anything that's playable within the game. In terms of gameplay, it's the same as having a game patched. You have to use the most recent rules, so it will redefine what those rules are and either buff or nerf a particular army, introduce new things along those lines. And then from a story standpoint, each edition moves the story, the macro story of the universe forward a little bit. Moving to a new edition is kind of a big deal. It's not like a thing that's done every year. So they don't drop all of the books at once. They sort of drip feed them. So what happened? One of the most recent 10th edition codexes, which was released by Games Workshop, was for a particular group called the Adeptus Custodes. They're basically these big golden armored badass bodyguards for the undead human emperor. There are 2 primary issues people have with the codex, and while I'm explaining what they are, I want you to mentally guess in your head which one you think is the bigger problem. The first issue is that it seems that the updates they made to the rules of play for the Custodes are really bad. I'm not going to get into it too much because it would take too long and I wouldn't describe it very well anyway, but basically the Custodes have a very defense-focused strategy for how they approach battles, and the 10th edition book took away or nerfed a bunch of their really key defensive capabilities without giving them any strong attack focused stuff to help buff their attack up. So their attack is still not great, and their defense, which was their main thing, has been severely compromised. So that's issue 1. Issue 2 is that there are girls now. Did you make your guess? For which one's pissing everyone off? Yeah, it's the girl part. In the roughly 100-page 10th edition Custodes Codex, there is a 2-page story about a female Custodes named Kesh. This marks the first time a female Custodes was ever expressly talked about by GW in any of the official lore. This wasn't announced, this wasn't like a big fanfare, oh, there's gonna be, they just released the book and it had this in it. And when they were asked about it on Twitter, they responded by saying, basically, there's always been female Custodes. And there is a group of people who are very upset about this. As a relevant aside, Warhammer has a very interesting makeup of players. Some aspects are very homogenous. For example, it's overwhelmingly men and overwhelmingly over 25 because it's very expensive to play. But politically, it actually can be pretty diverse because on the one hand, it does fall into kind of the traditional tabletop gaming nerd space, which leans more left. But then on the other side, it is very, very much a male gaze power fantasy game. And so it has attracted a lot of people who are more right-leaning as well. So there's a group of people who very much do not want Warhammer to change going forward from what it has historically been in a lot of ways and are very upset with the fact that Games Workshop does not agree with that. And Games Workshop has been very, very clear over the last few years about where they stand on this stuff. Several years ago, they actually made a very definitive statement about what they feel about this. And they expressly say at the end of that statement, and if you feel the same way, wherever and whoever you are, we're glad you're part of the Warhammer community. If not, you will not be missed. So from a purely just like, they've gone woke and I don't like it standpoint, that's true. They did, yes. And to be clear, anyone is within their rights to stop buying a product or playing a game for any reason, whether any other person agrees with it or not. So there are a lot of people saying that basically they're gonna stop playing entirely or stop giving their money to a Games Workshop, and they're well within their right to do that. But there are also a lot of folks trying to make the claim that this is an objectively bad decision for Games Workshop to do. And that's where I think it falls off, because just none of the arguments are that strong. One is that people feel that by saying there have always been women in the Custodes, that Games Workshop is trying to gaslight them. So people are combing through books to find instances of saying like male-focused things like he and sons and those guys or whatever. That's not what Games Workshop meant. What they meant was, this is now the reality. There have always been women. They're telling you that that's what it is now. I see people arguing over whether or not it's a retcon. It is, even if there isn't anything expressly in the history that says that they can't be women, simply being like, oh, and by the way, some of these were women the whole time. That is technically a retcon. But they retcon shit all the time. This isn't the first or last or anywhere near the biggest retcon that they've done. This story's been going for like 40 years. I also saw a really interesting tweet from somebody saying that the story was specifically set up to allow for retcons by saying like nobody's a reliable narrator. I thought that was interesting. But either way, I don't find it to be a really strong argument, because why is this retcon the one that's making you cancel all your subscriptions and stop paying? Not any of the other ones. Like, this doesn't affect the rules. You don't have to play women. There actually aren't any women models yet. They're probably going to release them soon. Again, it was a 2-page story in a 100+ page book. And I didn't even bring this up before, but the story's great. Like, I literally have not seen any actual criticisms of the story itself. It's very cool. Kesh is a badass. There's a lot of people thinking it's pandering, but that feels very much like a fat person existing is promoting obesity, like women actually existed in this. Oh, you're pandering to women. But then simultaneously, I'm seeing a lot of criticisms over the way this was rolled out, like the fact they didn't make a big announcement, like the first female Custodes, and here are the models, and look at Kesh, and da-da-da. Like, why was it just this quiet rollout where you just included women now? And it's just funny because doing a big fanfare thing of it would be pandering. And my understanding is that normally when GW makes these types of changes, this is how they do it. They don't make big announcements, they just do it. So they're treating this the exact same way they treat any other retcon of a similar type, which is, in my opinion, the right way to do it. Some really mad people brought up that they think it's because BlackRock has invested in Games Workshop. I promise you that's not it. BlackRock doesn't give a shit. As long as GW makes money, BlackRock is golden. Which brings us to the last argument, which is that this is a bad financial decision for Games Workshop. That all the pandering and wokeness will alienate their core fan base who currently spend all the money in favor of potentially pulling in new people who don't play and don't spend money. And certainly time will tell, but this is not the first thing like this Games Workshop has done. It's just the latest, and so far it's worked out very well for them. And in response to all of this uproar from people who are unhappy, there's a lot of people who are very, very happy who are then coming in to really like shit on the people who aren't happy. So there's a lot of warring going on both on social media, but also in like YouTube videos and in articles on websites. There's one website called Goonhammer that does articles on Warhammer stuff, and they put out an article every week called Content We Like. And this week a guy called Rob the Chirurgeon, who plays Chaos, which are against the Custodes, did the article, and he made it Custodes We Like instead of Content We Like, and it was all a bunch of orcs wearing gold armor, and then the last one was female Custodes. There's a lot of clowning going on. Actually, I'd be remiss to not get a quote, I guess.
Hey, what's up?
I'm doing the video about the Custodes thing. Can you introduce yourself real fast?
Sure. I'm Robert the Chirurgeon Jones, and I'm the CEO of Goonhammer.
Cool. So you wrote this article about Custodes you like, and you wrote at the bottom, want to scream and holler about female Custodes and how they don't belong? Go fuck yourself. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, the people who have a problem with female custodians can go fuck themselves.
Fair enough. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. I recently had the dubious luck of stumbling upon one of my videos being reposted on Reddit, and I wanted to address something specific about it. The reason that I'm always leaning forward so much in these videos is because I am at a standing desk. And I'm standing on a walking pad, and this is what I do my work day to day, and this is comfortable for me for typing purposes. But for these videos, I have this phone propped up against one of my monitors, and I physically have to reach forward to get to the button. So I was just doing this because it's easy. Like, my hip is jutted out to the side, and it's actually very comfortable, and it does not hurt my back at all. This does mean sometimes if I'm wearing a top that is in any way low cut, I'm going to be showing cleavage. I'm not actively trying to do that necessarily. I'm wearing whatever I'm wearing at the time. If I think it looks cute, I'll wear it on camera. But I do understand that I have a pretty large chest, so if it's weird for you, I apologize. I'll try and be more conscious of it. So last time we talked about the introduction of female Custodes within Warhammer 40k lore as part of the 10th edition. Today we're talking about another game update that people did not like and did not get a good fan response, but in a completely different game, which is Pokemon Go, which you may recall is my niche. As a reminder, Pokemon Go is a mobile game built on top of functionally Google Maps, where you make your own trainer and run around catching Pokemon. You can also do lots of other stuff with both your friends and other people you happen to meet who play, like taking down large raid bosses, fun stuff like that. The game infamously launched to a very big fanfare in 2016, where people went a little crazy for a few months and then a bunch of people dropped, but there's actually still a pretty sizable fan base of people who play. And from a meta perspective, it's become a little bit of a joke that Niantic kind of just does shit. Over the years, they made a number of changes that have had a good amount of backlash to them. Some they've rolled back, some they haven't. For example, when the pandemic started, they enhanced the distance that you could be from things to be able to interact with them, and then they tried to undo that years later, and everyone collectively was like, no! They did roll that one back. However, another change they made during the pandemic was that if you use incense, which is a thing that creates more spawns around you of Pokemon, originally, the way incense worked, you had to be walking, but then during the pandemic, they were like, well, we don't want to encourage people to go outside, so we'll just make it work fine, even if you're not moving. They undid that, and they kept that undone. Stuff like that. They changed prices of stuff so they can make more money, etc. Most of the time, it makes sense why they're making the change that they are. So what happened? Well, they made another change. And this one kind of makes sense. I get what they were going for. The most recent forced update to the game, so you have to do the update if you want to keep playing, completely changed the basic design and style of the in-game avatars. Now, I don't recall them making this kind of change ever before. So this is going to be, in 8 years, the first time there's been like a major change to the way your in-game avatar is presented. Now, some people are just going to be upset about that. There's no getting around that, right? This is a big change. It's been a long time. Some people are not going to be comfortable with anything you change it to. They're just not going to want it to be changed at all. And there's always going to be stylistic differences in what people prefer. That type of thing is normal. And as part of the update, you can change things like your body type in game. You can change your face shape in game, things like that. So there's a lot of advantage to having this type of thing. The goal was to add more customizability so that it wasn't just this one base model. And they always were pretty limited. So I understand wanting to let your in-game avatar represent you more than it previously had. And that is how they marketed it. However, they're really just not that good. The side-by-sides people are showing of their new and old, like what they were ported over to, are hilarious, honestly. The body shapes are all weird. The faces have this insane uncanny valley thing going on with them. I want to tell the story also of how I came to find this, because I knew that this was coming and I knew people weren't happy with the avatars, but I was kind of just doing other things, so I wasn't super paying attention. So yesterday I log in, and I'm mostly logging in so that I can do some quick things that I usually do on a daily basis just for rewards and stuff. Things don't totally load for me sometimes because it depends on the network I'm in and how strong that connection is. So nothing visually loaded except a rocket balloon came in from the side. Rocket balloons are when Team Rocket come to you to fight you. So I immediately click on it because there's a badge you can get for fighting them enough, and I'm trying to build that badge up. You get the point. I go through the battle, I win, I'm clicking through all this stuff. I'm just trying to get it done so I can get back to something else. And then on the win screen, I get hit with this. I literally startled. I went, ah! Like, Something about the combination of the face and the stance, like it put me into fight or flight for like a hot second before I realized what was actually happening. Like, oh, okay, this is the new avatar. I went in and looked at some of the customization options because that was kind of the whole point. And all of the faces look even worse, in my opinion, than the default face I was given, which already kind of scared me a bit at first. And now it's like actually distracting, like she's there in the lower corner. I can't escape her anymore. And then for the bodies, I guess they're trying to not contribute to an unrealistic expectation of what body standards should be. But even in that lens, it feels like the models are maybe too androgynous, might be the way to put it. Also, I went through and they all have no ass. Why? That is so specific. Why would you do that to them? So the skin tones, especially the darker ones, have this weird like ashy look to them now. So people look ill. And then the clothes don't look like they fit anymore in a lot of cases, especially the specialized items, which are items people paid money, coins to get. So there's like clipping issues and stuff that just looks weird and wrong. A lot of avatars look like they need to go see a tailor. And because a lot of these were items that people bought from the store in the game with money, they're saying to Niantic, hey, I would like my money back for these because I hate how this looks on this avatar. Now, I want to take a second just to be fair that there may be some people who do really like this. It is hard to find positive conversation around it in the flood of negative conversation. I will say for myself, it's not the type of thing I'm gonna quit over or do anything crazy about. I don't really care. The avatar is the least important part of the actual game, in my opinion. But I can definitely understand, like, if you spent money to do something and then they did something that directly ruined that thing, being fairly unhappy. There hasn't been any response that I've seen from Niantic as far as like rolling this back or anything. Some people mentioned that potentially it could be that they don't have the rights to use the old design anymore. I'd be a little surprised by that, but I guess it could be possible. But I think they're still in the official art, those old designs. So I don't think that would be the case unless the official art is also not being used and I just didn't notice that somewhere. But people have reached out about getting their coins reimbursed for items they bought in the shop because they now hate the way that item looks, and they pretty much got a fairly generic response back that says, no, try customizing. No one is really surprised. That is very much on brand. Someone made the joke that they did this so that they could turn around and sell us back our old designs once everyone hates the new ones. And it's concerning that I didn't immediately balk at that idea as being possible. For now, it is what it is, and we either have to accept it or not. Like I said, it doesn't affect the gameplay, so at least for me, it is not that big of a deal. I will be interested to see what ends up happening with this. Again, like I've said, Niantic has rolled things back in the past, but they've been simpler rollbacks than this. So I feel like this might be a thing that they've committed to in a way that would not be easily rolled back. So I do think it's probably something that we just kind of got to go forward with. I just need a few days to get used to her weird gaze looking at me from the corner the whole time. Ugh. Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. This episode's a little janky because I'm obviously not in my house. I'm in New York for a few days. The next episodes will be about the Freitas Moon thing and the Watcher thing, but in the midst of that, remembered that I still was waiting to cover the lobster talk thing, so I want to do that now quickly. Also, side note, this top I wore in another video in yellow, like a yellow green, and people asked me where it was from, and I said Yitty, and that was wrong. It's from Aerie. They have it in a million colors. I love it so much. Please go get it. It's fantastic. Last time we talked about the updates to Pokemon Go's avatars, which have a number of problems and people are generally just very not happy with. And as I said, today we're going to talk about the lobster talk situation. So when we say lobster talk, I think we're pretty much all thinking of the same guy, and that's Jacob Knowles. This is actually more comfortable. I think I've literally trained my body to want to be in this position. Jacob got really popular a few years back because he would show videos of him doing his work on his lobster boat. His family has been doing this for 5 generations, so he has a lot of experience in the field, and he was really personable on camera and taught us a lot of very cool things about lobsters. Which ones are able to be hunted, which ones aren't, how to identify different types, stuff like that. Informational stuff like that is very popular on TikTok, so it's not surprising that it went over very well. It's also worth acknowledging he is very good on camera. He also became particularly well known for cutting barnacles off of lobsters that he was gonna throw back for one reason or another and giving them a snack, which is very cute. Since getting big, and because what he does is pretty specialized, he has millions of subscribers, and until now, I have not heard of anything problematic relating to him. So, What happened? A few weeks back, one of the members of Jacob's crew named Keith Porter posted a video saying that he ended up quitting working for Jacob. He goes on to say that he'd worked for Jacob for years and that the reason he quit is because he, Keith, is the person who initially got all of the TikTok stuff up and going for Jacob. He claims he had to convince Jacob to get on TikTok in the first place and that it was Keith's idea for like all the different bits of what they would do, and Keith was the one filming, etc. And so for all of these years, he's been a very integral part of the whole TikTok phenomenon that has been Jacob Knowles. Keith claims that in the beginning things were fine and Jacob was good about giving him credit for his contributions in getting the TikTok up and running and things along those lines. But that as time went on, Jacob started just doing interviews and stuff where he would take sole credit as just representing this whole brand that he has now. And most specifically, once the channel got monetized and started making money, Keith was given very, very little of that money, reportedly, that was being made by Jacob through that channel. Keith claims specifically that the first month that they were able to be monetized, the channel made $20,000 and Keith was given a $600 bonus. People were obviously very sad and upset by this and disappointed in Jacob. Like, we like you a lot. Why would you treat someone who is a 50-50 partner, it sounds like this? So Jacob had a lot of comments flooding on his Instagram as well as his TikToks, and he didn't address it for a good amount of time. When he did address it, it was by posting a very, very high production video. I was kind of surprised, actually, talking about where he came from and his history and things that he's done up until now. The video doesn't directly address like, oh, Keith said this and this is the real situation, or this is why XYZ, but indirectly, it very clearly says, this is my business and Keith was my employee. So yes, Keith may have helped me with this, but this TikTok is related to my brand and my business, and all of the money goes into the business. I pay Keith a salary and I gave him a bonus because this was such a great idea, but I'm not going to be, it's implied, he doesn't say this, I'm not going to be splitting things with him down the middle as though we're two independent people. And since then, Jacob has basically just kept it pushing and continued to make his own content. This is a hard one for me because I will say, as much as I think it sucks for Keith, it is at least a semi-valid point from Jacob. When you are an employee of an organization, if you do something to boost that organization, you don't necessarily get an equal share of what that benefit is for the company. For example, my company that I'm aware of is not on TikTok. And if they came to me and said, hey, Caroline, you're on TikTok, can you help us get on TikTok? And I said, okay. And I gave them all the ideas, filmed all the stuff for them, did everything. And they just, even if I starred in it, literally if I did the whole thing, I am not guaranteed or entitled to any of the revenue that comes from that TikTok channel. And if they choose to give me a bonus, give me a raise or something as a reflection of my contribution toward the efforts of the company, then cool. And if they don't have to. I don't have to be happy about it for sure. And I can quit just like Keith did for sure. But if I came to them and said, you guys made $20,000, I expect $10,000 of that, it would be almost a laughable thing to ask. I get caught on it though in this situation for two reasons. One, any situation where I'm leaning toward the side of an organization or company, corporate entity, I feel like I need to step back because usually they're not in the right. And I don't feel like employees are treated as well as they should be generally. For example, at the very least, I feel like giving him a raise or something more consistent, if he was going to be consistently contributing to this extra source of revenue, probably would have been warranted in this case. Or potentially a negotiation of a flat percentage of profits that he will always get. I just don't think it would have been 50%. And the other reason I hesitate is because the size of the corporation, I think, matters, right? When you're talking about a boat that has a specific number of crew versus a literal corporate entity, like my company has like thousands and thousands of people that work for it, one person's contribution has far more impact and weight. So I don't think it's out of line to expect more from your contributions in that type of environment. I will say from a response standpoint that Jacob's video was probably one of the best you could have made, given that he wasn't going to say, yeah, everyone's right, and give Keith the money. He doesn't come off as accusatory. He gives more information
information about where he's coming from. He addresses it without addressing it, and he's very non-confrontational about the whole thing. It's pretty good. Obviously, it's not going to be satisfactory for people who think he really should be giving more money to Keith, but since he's not going to give more money to Keith, there's really no way you're going to salvage that. Those are going to be people you lose. For Keith's part, he's been very strongly encouraged to start creating this type of content himself, and he has started to do that. His account is currently still much smaller than Jacob's is, so I'd encourage you to go give him a follow if this is the type of stuff that you like to watch. The very, very cynical part of me cannot help but laugh at the idea that in a couple of months, if Keith does get very big, that he might find himself in a similar situation as to what Jacob was in, though. So I guess we'll see.
Hello and welcome back to Niche Tea, where we talk about drama happening in communities you may not be a part of. Last time we talked about the schism in the Lobster Talk community between Jacob Knowles and Keith Potter. This week has been a little intense and I was hoping to get fully cleaned up and pretty for the next video, but I have to talk about this now. Today we're talking about the K-pop community and specifically what is going on at HYBE. For setup, HYBE is one of the big four Korean agencies for K-pop idols. The other three being SM Entertainment, JYP, and YG. And previously it was only those three. It was called the Big Three until BTS got big because BTS is under HYBE. Now, if that confuses you because you remember that the name of BTS's agency is actually Big Hit Entertainment, you are also right. That's because unlike the other big three and most agencies most of the time, HYBE is operating as a holding company over a number of different individual agencies. It's actually very similar to the way advertising companies are structured, where there is a macro holding company and then underneath there are a bunch of individual specialist agencies. The plus side to this is, I assume, theoretically creative freedom. If you have a bunch of individual organizations that all have their own CEOs, their own leadership structure, their own creative talent, etc., then they're able to produce more independent vision than if you have one holistic company with one set of leaders. Diversity usually leads to a better creative output. The downfall of this type of setup is that simply by having more people involved who are in positions of power, there's way more infighting. Anyone who works in advertising can probably attest to that. The second piece of background you need to know is about a person named Min Hee-jin. Min Hee-jin is the CEO of one of HYBE's other sub-labels named Adore and is famously the creator, inspiration, manager, etc. of New Jeans. Now, Min Hee-jin has a very impressive legacy in K-pop as a creative director. Before she moved to HYBE, she was working at SM Entertainment for a very long time and was intimately involved in the creation and direction of a number of their very, very big second and third gen groups. And obviously New Jeans is a huge success, so she has a good set of credentials with her. However, she's also had a number of concerning things just kind of following her around. The way I would summarize those things would be that, at least to me, it seems like her creative vision is very, very strongly focused on youth in a way that I don't think is particularly good or safe for the idols in a number of instances, especially for girls. She really wants them to just be very, very youthful, and she really wants to show that in a way that frankly is not super appropriate in a lot of instances. Questionable concepts that have come from her, questionable photo shoots idols have done because of her, and this followed her to HYBE with New Jeans specifically. New Jeans famously debuted very young. One of the members was 14, and yet even with them so young, one of their earliest songs has very questionable lyrics in it. It's literally called Cookie. And when this of course got a ton of backlash, Adore's official response was basically you can't expect us to know everything about how everyone's gonna take everything. They were truly trying to act like they had no idea, despite the fact that they very clearly understand English. They work English into their songs more than any other group does, to the point where New Jeans gets a lot of flack for that from K-netizens. So I do not believe you. And generally there's a lot of concern with how close she is with the New Jeans members and their families, and this comes back up. So what happened is happening. And heads up, this is gonna have to be kind of high level because it's so much going on and it's all translated from Korean, and I'm doing my best. If I get something wrong, please tell me. Basically though, a few days ago, HYBE came out and said that they caught Min Hee-jin plotting to take Adore, the company, away from HYBE and to take New Jeans with her. They said they did an internal audit. I cannot figure out what that literally means though, but they claim to have found evidence that she was actively plotting alongside her vice CEO to get other investors to come in and take over the stake that HYBE has in Adore, which is the New Jeans agency that she's CEO of. HYBE has 80% of the stock, and then the rest is between Min Hee-jin and other executives at Adore. They also claim that she was doing a bunch of other shit to actively sabotage other HYBE artists, specifically so it would make this easier for her to take Adore and leave. They claimed she was leaking personal information of the other HYBE artists so that they would get into scandals and stuff. So for example, there's another HYBE group called La Seraphim, and when they debuted, they had a big scandal with one of their members, and that member ended up having to leave. Hybe also claimed that the only reason Adore was made in the first place was because Min Hee-jin refused to make a girl group under Source Entertainment because she wanted a different direction. She wanted to do something totally different than what they wanted. She basically didn't want to use anything that Source already had, like their trainees or like anything else. Like she picked one person to pull into New Jeans. Everything else she did from scratch. And allegedly, according to Hybe, because of that, it created a debt within Source Entertainment that was so large that they had to disband G-Friend, which was a veteran girl group that still had a fairly decent following and was famously very suddenly disbanded. Even the members had no idea. It was really badly done and it made a lot of people really sad. But wait, there's more. Hybe claims that Min Hee-jin went to a shaman specifically to do something which would send BTS into the military. That's not even all of it, but we got to move on. So Hybe puts this out alongside saying they've asked her to step down as CEO and they've asked for all her company materials, including her laptop. There's some back and forth in the media over this for a little bit. It comes out that Min Hee-jin is like, no, I'm not going to step down. No, you can't have my laptop. You're just trying to steal all my creative ideas. And she basically says this is Hybe retaliating against her for being so very vocal in her complaints to leadership over the past couple of months about another girl group that debuted under another sub-agency of Hybe called Islet. Islet is also a very young 5-member girl group and has a similar aesthetic and a similar sound to New Jeans. Hybe then turns around and reports Min Hee-jin to the police for breach of trust, which seems to be a charge specific to people who are in a position internally where they can cause harm to a company and breach the trust of the shareholders and the other executives. So this would specifically apply to her allegedly releasing information that hurt Hybe's artists and thus Hybe's stock value and the whole conspiracy to take over thing. Then Min Hee-jin decides to hold a press conference with her lawyer. In retrospect, this was maybe not the choice. This press conference was unlike anything that has ever happened, I think, in the K-pop world. It's usually a very clean, buttoned up, prepared, scripted environment, and this was the antithesis of that. She was clearly very upset. She was crying openly. She was swearing openly. She was saying that, like, her lawyer, her poor lawyer, he kept jumping in to clarify and stop her from talking about certain things and all this stuff and to keep her in line as much as possible because, as a reminder, in Korea, you can be prosecuted for things you say much more easily than you can in the US. But the key things coming out of that were primarily that she has always felt that she'd been set up to fail by Hybe because she didn't join and do the exact thing that they wanted. Like, it seems like they very much coaxed her on and said, you can do all these things and you can have your vision and whatever. And then they were like, we want you to basically make Le Sserafim, it would be my guess. She didn't want to do that. She didn't want to work with some certain idols that she thought were way too old, even though they were very famous and Hybe wanted to use them, who are now in Le Sserafim. And that wasn't her vision. So because of that, she claims that basically Hybe has been hurting her this whole time. Like, they debuted Le Sserafim before New Jeans when that wasn't supposedly originally the plan. She claims they did that so people would think that Le Sserafim was her group because, again, she has like a history of making good groups, so it would get more press for them. And she claims that Hybe allowing Islet to debut the way that they have, where they have a very, again, similar aesthetic, similar musical style, in her mind copying New Jeans, is hurting New Jeans in a way that she thinks is inappropriate and unprofessional. Her lawyer basically said that the idea that she would try and take over a company that Hybe has 80% stake in is absurd, which I kind of agree. Even trying to sell more shares to other places so that it like waters down and dilutes the share that Hybe has, 80%. She says a lot of the evidence they have is basically her and her vice CEO shit-talking Hybe at each other because they were mad, but that there was no substance to it. And according to her lawyer, conspiracy to breach trust is not a crime. So since nothing has happened, there is no crime, according to him. She then further claims that it's actually Hybe who's breaching trust because of the aforementioned stuff that they've been doing to hurt New Jeans. She flat out denies creating any type of debt for any of the companies and having anything to do with G-Friend's disbandment. She says that she was talking to her friend who is a shaman and was asking her if she knew anything about when they might go to the military because she wanted to be able to prepare for the flagship group being gone and what that might mean for the other artists, and denies releasing any private information. The whole thing was, again, very emotional, very messy. On the one hand, I can understand being in that state and feeling like you have to talk if you feel like you're being painted a particular way. And it did make me feel a little bit more inclined to believe her because it made it feel more authentic than anything that ever comes out of that world. However, she kept talking about things like people wanting her to unalive herself, the agency wanting her to unalive her. Like, she talked about that so much. And she went on this very concerning diatribe about the New Jeans members being so upset and crying and asking about her and stuff. Like, that's not really relevant to what's happening right now. So people had a lot of feelings about that whole thing because it was kind of, again, all over the place. The major consensus I can see is that no one likes anyone in this. Everyone just wants the artists to be okay and no one cares about any of the management bullshit. especially New Jeans because they're very much caught in the middle of this. In response to the press conference, Hybe basically said, "We're not commenting. This whole thing is stupid. You're still fired. Give us your laptop." Eyelet's creative director at the other agency posted an Instagram photo of just a middle finger. And I saw a tweet saying that all the lights at the Hybe building were on at like 1:30 a.m. You got to remember, all of these agencies are in the same building. It has got to be chaos over there. The real question is, can we please have G-Friend back?